Good morning, everyone. Hello, hi. Thanks. It's good to see some people here, and welcome to this info session on STEP, the Strategic Technologies for Europe platform. My name is Tobias McLean, and my colleague over there, Benoit Esman. We will present to you this initiative supporting the EU industry and boosting investments in critical technologies in Europe. STEP overall will leverage and steer resources across 11 EU funding programs to 3 targeted investment areas in the EU. That is digital technologies and deep tech innovation, that is clean and resource efficient technologies, and the third important block is biotechnologies. But why is this necessary? What is at stake? Overall, we've seen growing geopolitical tensions and greater geo-economic competition, as well as shocks such as the COVID crisis. You remember that. Then there's Russia's war of aggression against Ukraine, and all of that have highlighted the risks inherent in certain economic dependencies. Such risks, unless they are properly managed, can challenge the functioning of our societies, our economies, our strategic interests, and our ability to act. And the EU industry has also been challenged. We have high inflation, labor shortages, supply chain disruptions, rising interest rates, and spikes in energy prices. We have a lot of global competition, especially in important technological fields. And the EU overall is not alone in this process, of course. Countries all over the world have already started reacting to those challenges and have adopted dedicated strategies and are now implementing them. And the EU has put forward some initiatives to support industries, but overall more structural answers are needed to those challenges, especially in development, research, development and manufacturing of strategic technologies in the EU. We've also asked the industry what they need the EU to do in terms of funding. And what we have received is what you see here on the right side. It shows that EU funding can be quite complex. There's a need to have a bit more streamlined, clear deadlines, clear success rates, improved advisory services, and overall, there's a need for a user-friendly portal that shows all those EU financing initiatives that are out there. And lastly, there's also the need to have to secure financing from more than one source of the EU and together with member state financing. And that is why overall the Commission has proposed in June 2023 the Strategic Technologies for Europe platform, STEP. What is STEP? STEP is an initiative to designed to enhance the EU's industrial strategy, competitiveness, reinforce European sovereignty, and we're focusing on development and manufacturing of critical technologies. It aims to bolster investments in the 3 sectors that I mentioned, and overall we estimate there will be an investment potential of up to 50 billion euros. STEP leverages and synergizes resources from various EU programs. Those include Digital Europe program, the European Defence Fund, EU for Health, Horizon Europe, the Innovation Fund, InvestEU, the Recovery and Resilience Facility, and all the cohesion programs that are out there. It will be coordinated inside the Commission by the STEP Task Force, of which my colleague Benoit and I are a part of. And a new online STEP portal will consolidate information about funding opportunities that is currently scattered all across the place in one site for all the 3 sectors that we are supporting. Now, an initial version of the STEP portal will be launched quite soon, and over the coming months it will develop even more features. Now, what are the synergies with the rest of the EU industrial policy? STEP is only one instrument, of course, supporting the Green Deal industrial plan, but it is complementary to the Net Zero Industry Act and ZIA and the Critical Raw Materials Act. And while those 2 aim at simplifying the regulatory environment, STEP is a financing tool. But now the obvious and important question, of course, is what's eligible for STEP? I mentioned the three technology fields that you can see here on the right side. And those are sectors that we identified as really pivotal for reducing strategic dependencies in the EU. And they're chosen based on their strategic relevance, highlighted in key EU policy and analysis. Now, we also intend to strengthen these sectors' values change, encourage investments in critical raw materials, address labor and skill shortages, and a guidance note on what exactly is eligible under this will be published by the Commission in the second quarter of 2024. Now, who can benefit from STEP? A broad spectrum of companies, that's clear, from startups to SMEs to mid-caps and large corporations will find support here. And the Commission will design dedicated calls for proposals that are aligned with STEP objectives, including the requirement to fulfill at least one of the two conditions that are mentioned here on the left side, either bringing an innovative, cutting-edge element with significant economic potential to the European market, and to contribute to reduce or prevent strategic dependencies of the Union. STEP, and this is really important for most people that also come from the private sector, it does not create new eligibility rules. Eligibility conditions for each project will be determined by the specific rules of each funding program. For example, in the work programs and the calls for proposals, eligibility selection and award criteria. And this was kind of the quick, broad introduction, and now my colleague Benoit will hand over and talk a bit more in detail how it works. Benoit.
Thank you. Thank you, Tobias. Is this working? Yeah, you can hear me, perfect. So indeed, after Tobias has set the scene already on STEP, where it comes from, let's focus a little bit on the tools and on the practicalities. So under the STEP regulation, there are actually 4 tools that we are going to use in order to address the needs of the companies and to support the EU competitiveness. We will support reprogramming of the already existing EU programs. We will deliver a sovereignty seal, a STEP seal, in order to help companies, industrial stakeholders to get faster and easier access to funding. We will launch, as Tobias said, a new STEP portal, which will provide industrial stakeholders the opportunity to look at the funding opportunities that exist right now. And we have the STEP task force, which will play the role of a one-stop shop, so to get directly in touch with us through this one-stop shop. So maybe in order to do this a little bit more interactive, we have often heard from industry that the EU funding landscape is very complex. And actually, through the meeting that we have with industry, we realize that a lot of them know already what kind of EU funding is available, but a lot of industrial stakeholders also neglect or are not aware of some other programs they could get funding from. So STEP is covering actually 11 programs, 6 which are under direct and indirect management, meaning that they are managed directly at Commission level, and 5 which are managed by the region, by the member states. So maybe among the audience, who is familiar already with Horizon Europe? By a show of hand, because usually this is the one which is indeed the most common or the most well-known among industrial stakeholders. We have the Innovation Fund. Who is familiar with that one? Because it's a little bit newer. It came into life only last year or a couple of years ago. But we also have the Digital Europe program, for instance, the European Defence Fund, and the European Defence Fund is increasing in importance, also by the fact that it has been given an additional 1.5 billion for financing new projects. So this is the only fund which is getting additional top-ups, fresh money for the industry. But among the other ones, what we are trying to do with our colleagues in the DGs, so in the Directorate General in the Commission, which are responsible for each of those programs, is to rechannel the money towards the STEP sector. So digital deep tech, clean and efficient resource, clean tech, and biotech. So they are working now to make dedicated STEP calls for the industry that will be launched, the first one very soon with the European Defence Fund, and the others towards the end of the year. With this well, actually 5 programs, because InvestEU is a little bit different. It's a different animal, but it's also providing support, but it's not covering the STEP seal, the sovereignty seal. But the 5 other programs will award a sovereignty seal to the projects. I will come back on this a little bit later. But the idea is really to help projects which are getting money either at European level directly or through the member states, through the cohesion policy, so the European Regional Development Fund, or the Recovery and Resilience Facility. So we want to mobilize the resources and to pool the resources to better support the industry. On the sovereignty seal, actually, Tobias said there are no new eligibility rules, and that's exactly the case. So there is nothing to be done to get a sovereignty seal. If your company apply through one of the programs which are covered by the sovereignty seal, so Digital Europe program, European Defence Fund, EU for Health, Horizon Europe, and the Innovation Fund, whether you get a grant in the end, whether you manage to get funding, whether you are successful or not, you would get the sovereignty seal if you pass a certain threshold. And the idea of the sovereignty seal, of course, you need to meet the conditions which are related to STEP, so that you need to contribute to the STEP objectives that Tobias showed you before under the scope. You will get a sovereignty seal. And with the sovereignty seal, the idea is that it should help kind of fast track the application to get funding from another source of EU funding. So you might apply it under the Innovation Fund. And what we realized in the past is that some of the programs are so popular that they are very competitive. And depending the financial allocation which is given to a program, you might have a very good project which is ranked very high by the evaluators, but because the competition is so fierce, your project might not get funded. And this is pretty unfair, and it doesn't help also generating and supporting the good ideas that we have in Europe. So what we would like to do is to say that, okay, maybe you didn't get funding through the Innovation Fund because your project ranked high, but not high enough to get the funding. With the sovereignty seal, we help you getting fast-tracked and to get the money under another European fund, whether it's the cohesion policy, whether it's the Recovery and Resilience Facility, or the Modernization Fund, InvestEU, or even other union funding program. But your application and the sovereignty seal should help you to get access to financing without starting from scratch again. We also said that actually next week we will launch a first version of a new portal. And again, this is to reply to the issue that the EU funding landscape is too complex, too fragmented, that people need to go through several documents, hundreds of pages usually, to know whether they're eligible or not. So what we want to do with the STEP portal is to make not even the access, but at least the information on the funding available easier. So that you can come on the portal, see on the dashboard, based on your sector, based on your type of project, okay, what's in it for me? I have a project developing components for wind turbine, for instance. I'm looking for a grant, €1 million. You type these kind of things, and you will get an answer showing you which are the most relevant funds you should apply for. Instead of having the full landscape of 50+ European programs and start looking into the documents whether your project is eligible or not, this should already provide you, narrow down a little bit the opportunities. It doesn't say, and it doesn't make it easier that you don't have to apply for funding. We are not there yet, but at least it should provide you a better idea of the funding opportunities you may have for your project. So we will launch a first version of the portal, which will be, let's be honest, rather basic in the beginning, because we want to compile all the information, but we intend to develop it, to use also AI to help having something which is more tailor-made for every single visitor, and to provide a few information and get then most relevant answers. The portal will also be a way for us to get connected directly with the stakeholders, so to be the direct point of entry with industry, but also with the member states, because this is a joint effort that we are doing on STEP at 2 different levels at least. Firstly, internally within the Commission, as I said before, to reprogram the money where it should go towards the strategic priorities, so towards the 3 sectors covered by STEP. This is the work we are doing with our colleagues in the respective DGs, but we also need to encourage the member states to play their part, because a huge share of the European budget is also managed by member states and by the regions, actually. So we are also setting up a network with the member states with STEP national contact points, where we will need to look with them how the programs, usually with the Regional Development Fund, the European Regional Development Fund, or with the Recovery and Resilience Facility, which has been set up with Next Generation EU, where to put the money. To make a link also with what I said before, with the sovereignty seal, we also expect that we will have a pipeline of projects. So if a lot of projects are coming from, let's say, East and North Finland, but which are not getting money because of different reasons, because they are not successful in the call they applied for, at least it should give an idea for the region, for the national authority, that there are a lot of demand from this sector, and so to incite them to rechannel the money towards those sectors. We also want to get financial institutions and private investors coming to the portal and to look also for project ideas, so namely the ones which will be promoted with the sovereignty seal. We envisage to get the possibility for project promoter to pitch their ideas, and so that it is presented to a group of investors. We will be working with the European Investment Bank, with the EIF, but also with a series of private investors. We will also list the different possibilities to get advisory services. Of course, we want to make with the portal this link with the industry, with you as stakeholders, but we are not, on the other hand, taking you by the hand and explaining you where you should apply. There are already advisory services which has been set up for that. You have, for instance, Enterprise Europe network, you have plenty of consultancy firms, but you also have general advisory services on InvestEU or on some of the programs which could help you finding the way forward, helping you set up your application, etc. And finally, I wanted to show a little bit what are the forthcoming opportunities. So as I said, the European Defence Fund, which has been increased with 1.5 billion euros very recently, will launch its first call for proposals later this month. So the calls will be open very soon, beginning of May actually, but they will be already presented on the portal as from next week. So you can already have a look at what are the type of topics which are covered by these calls for proposals. We had the Innovation Fund, which has been actually just closed on the 9th of April. So the next wave of funding opportunities under the Innovation Fund will come a little bit later this year, by the end of the year. And this will be again displayed on the portal. We will have soon also some additional calls under EU for Health and under the Digital Europe program. So there are things which are already foreseen, and this is also something that we realized by the discussion that we have with different enterprises, that sometimes knowing that the call is open is already a little bit too late, because you don't have the time to prepare a proper application. So having a little bit this advance notice about the funding opportunities that will come in the near future, towards the end of this year, toward the beginning of next year, might be something already useful for you, so that you can better plan, better prepare, depending on where you are with your project. And so in a nutshell, I will close it here. If you have any questions, you can contact us through this email, which is the general mailbox, to get in touch directly with us. You will have here the address of the portal, which will be launched as from 29th of April, so from next week. And if you still want to discuss a little bit more in details, STEP with Tobias and myself, we will be here around on the stand of the European Commission, in the Experts Corner as well. So feel free to get in touch with us if needed. And with that, I thank you very much and wish you a very good day. Thank you.